So those of you who were here last week will have heard me introducing a new theme. So for the next 2 months we're going to be following a new theme, which is gearing us up for the retreat, the Four Sanghas retreat in Taraloka at the end of May, which is called the Heart of Perfect Wisdom on the Heart Sutra. So we're meandering our way towards the Heart Sutra. We're, as it were, following the course of development of Buddhism, because the Heart Sutra came as a corrective to early Buddhism, you could say. So we're starting off with that early Buddhism to work out how what is said in the Heart Sutra relates to it. I won't be saying very much about the Heart Sutra tonight. What we're going to do is get stuck into the first of the major teachings that is contained within the Heart Sutra, which are the skandas, the 5 skandas. So we'll cover these over this week and next week. So last week I was talking about pre-Buddhist Buddhism, which is, as it were, what the Buddha first started teaching very soon after he got awakened. It was apparently, according to scholars, very unformulated. The tradition, as it were, launches in with quite a well-formulated, what is said to be the first sermon, the first teaching, which is the discourse which is recorded about the Buddha talking to the 5 ascetics. So historically, this should be his first sermon, his first teaching. It's all very well formulated. He's got the Four Noble Truths all laid out, bosh, 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 bosh. He sort of goes through it very systematically, and one of them, Kondanya, gets it. So if we just sort of take this as it were, the traditional mythological sequence, the first teaching he gives are the Four Noble Truths. And the scholars will argue with that, that's okay. The second teaching in this traditional sense, what's sometimes called the second sermon, is called the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, which means the mark of non-self, the mark of non-self. So this is one of the 3 lakshanas, or lakkhanas in Pali. And after he gives this sermon, they all get it. All 5 ascetics have got it. They've become awakened in some manner or the other. So this in itself is interesting. What is distinctive about the Buddha's teaching? What did he bring that was new in his teaching? Because, well, if we think in terms of ethics, meditation and wisdom as a way of talking about Buddhism, ethics was already there in the culture. It was quite new. It had just been sort of coming into fruition or into efflorescence. So the Jain tradition, for example, had a very, very well-developed code on ethics, which was all basically in, as it were, contradistinction to what had been before, which was a very sacrificial-based tradition. You know, kill lots of animals and you'll be all right. You earn your merit, so to speak, by killing animals. So something new comes in, this kind of ethical, non-violent attitude. So the Buddha, or Siddhartha, he would have known about that. There was already a new current within the culture. Then meditation. We know that Siddhartha learned meditation from a couple of meditation teachers. So again, that was an existing current in the tradition, in the culture of the time. So what he brought new was more in the field of wisdom. And it's wisdom that this series is trying to address, what I'm calling practical Buddhist wisdom. How do the Buddhist teachings help us practically, rather than as a stamp collecting exercise in interesting lists? So one of the really unique teachings that the Buddha came up with is this teaching on non-self, on anatta. Now, I'm not really going to go into anatta because that's another whole thing. In fact, I've already given a talk on it here, I think. But I'd love to say something about it briefly. So, basically, one of the Buddha's main realizations is that the cause of all our suffering, in the end, can be boiled down, or almost all of it anyway, can be boiled down to this wrong understanding of ourself. We don't really understand what our nature actually is. And because of that, we get ourselves into trouble. Because of that, we form this abstracted sense of ourself as the owner of our experience and as the subject of our experience, who's constantly trying to create a source of stability, constantly trying to hang on to things, pull things into our experience to feel more substantial, more kind of more solid, yeah. So we form this abstracted entity that we call self, and this is an entity that the Buddha is trying to correct. He says, actually, the reality is rather different to this. And if we can actually see what we really are, then a whole great raft of suffering will just fall away. We stop taking life so personally. We stop taking life so seriously. We stop being in such a strong push-pull relationship with the world. We're not constantly trying to keep out all the things that threaten us, and we're not trying to constantly accumulate things that reinforce us. We can relax all that energy, all of that anxiety, all of that unnecessary activity, forming, getting into bad relationships with people because of our view of ourselves. We stop trying to accumulate a sense of solidity and security, which is, although it feels counterintuitive, that's actually what causes so many of our problems. Okay, so that's the sort of the basic problem laid out, that the way we think of ourselves is a problem. It's not to say that we do not exist, just to correct that. It's not saying that. It's saying that the way that we think we exist is mistaken. So let's just launch into this a little bit. The Buddha said that we think there is a fixed, independent entity that, as it were, goes through our life, that we call ourself, that is, as it were, the recipient of all experience. It's the actor, the generator of all of our actions. It's the owner of all of our experiences. And he's saying it's not like that. So don't take my word for it. Let's look for it. Okay, let's really look closely at our experience, at that sense that we have of ourselves, and see if that's true. So how do we go around looking for things, okay? So if you were to come round to my house just before I'm about to go shopping, you'd likely see me running through the house looking for my wallet. I'll be in the kitchen. Where did I leave it? Did I leave it in the kitchen? No. Maybe it's upstairs. Maybe it's in the bedroom. Maybe it's in the office. So I'm sort of running around looking for the wallet. And it's a rather ineffectual way of looking. So a more effective way of looking is to say, okay, let's really look in the kitchen. Is it in the jackets? No, it's not on the table. No, it's not on the fridge. No. It's not on the sofa. No. Okay, it's definitely not in the kitchen. Let's try the office. Is it on top of my desk? No. Is it in the drawer? No. Is it on the bed in the office? No, it's not there. Okay, let's try the bedroom. Is it in the pockets of the trousers on the on the bed? No. So if you really want to look for your wallet, you go through each room and you search systematically, right? And if you still can't find it, then you know you've left it somewhere else. If you've searched every room thoroughly, you know that it's not in the house. So this is how we go about looking for this sense of self. You sort of divide up the self, you divide up our sort of empirical being into rooms, so to speak, and then you check out each one of those rooms very, very carefully. So the first easy division that we can form is between, as it were, body and mind. So this is how earliest tradition looked. So we've got body, we've got mind. So we look for the sense of self in the body. Is this sense of self to be found in the body? You sort of check that out. Is it to be found in the mind? You check that out, okay? And then they thought, mind, that's that's a big room. There's some little rooms in the mind. Why don't we try subdividing mind a little bit more? So they subdivided mind into 4 separate entities. So you've got the body, and then you've got mind, which is divided into feeling, or Vedana, perception, samya, volitions and mental activity, sanskara, and consciousness itself, vijnana. So these are the 5 skandas. And what we can do is use these 5 skandas to look really carefully to really get a sense of what ourselves as a human being is. And in particular, we can really get a sense of how we create a sense of self, which is, as it were, abstracted beyond the skandhas. But I won't go into that right now. What I'm trying to just sketch out is, why do we use these 5 skandhas? Now, skandha means heap. It's a very imprecise term. It means heap. Now, my brother's a farmer, and he's got this big barn with these, I've been and seen them, these sort of heaps of grain. Have these big sort of conical heaps of grain in his barn. And they're not very precise entities really, and they sort of spill on the floor and they mix up a little bit. So that's a little bit like these 5 skandhas, these 5 heaps. The way that we divide our experience into 5 heaps is not a clear-cut, precise, there's no cut along the dotted line to be found in our psyche. So just bear in mind, these are a tool. It's not some kind of ultimate reality that human beings are divided into 5 pieces. This is a tool for checking who we really are. Yeah. Incidentally, if you look at if you've seen the Wheel of Life, on the outside of the Wheel of Life, there's a copy next door. There's the 12 links around the outside, the 12 nidanas around the outside. And somewhere around about sort of 3 o'clock, you've got a boat with 4 people rowing the boat. That's the representation of the 5 skandhas. The boat represents body, and the 4 people rowing represents the other 4 skandhas, which collectively are sometimes called nama. So that's your Vedana, feeling, your samya, perception, your sanskara, volitional activities, and vijnana, consciousness. Those are the other 4. Okay. So we're going to come on to those next week. So today's a nice easy one. I might move on to Vedana, but we'll see how we get on. So what we're looking for when we're looking at the first one, which is basically body, what we're looking for is the way in which we experience our body. A nice, solid, easy, relatively easy thing to engage with. We don't need telling what our body is yet. Well, actually we do, but anyway, I'll come on to that. So the Pali word that's been translated here, It's not actually body, it's form. So form is translating the word rupa, R-U-P-A. So this is often called a rupa. So Buddhist statues are often called rupas because they are the form of the Buddha. Yep. But we've got a rupa as well. This is our rupa. So let's just take a moment to experience our rupa, experience our form. So here we are, we're just sitting here. We don't have to be in any special position to experience our body. And then imagine if someone were to walk past you and bump into you. And you feel this knock on the body. And is there some kind of feeling of, hey, you just bumped into me. You bumped into me. So sometimes we feel like we are our body, don't we? Or you're walking down the street and there's someone in your way, they step out in front of you, they're in your way. So there we're sort of identifying with self as body. So of course we also relate to our body through its visuals from the outside. So we might look in the mirror and see we've got a big spot on our chin. And think, oh no, I've got a spot on the chin. Feel self-conscious. Yeah. Or we might see we're putting on a few pounds and think, oh dear, I'm getting a bit fat. So these are all ways in which we can, as it were, identify self with body. We think, I am my body because my body is a bit fat, or my body's got a spot on the chin. I'm trying to do a bit more working out. I'm weighing myself. I get happy when I put on a bit of weight. And I think, ooh, good. Put on half a kilo, that's good. I'm a bit more buff now. So all these different ways of identifying self as body. So are we our body? To what extent do you feel yourself to be your body? So as I say, sometimes there's times when somehow or other our attachment to body becomes heightened, because maybe the body starts not working, for example, not working as we want it to, or because someone else comments on it in a way that is either gratifying or not gratifying, or because it's not matching our own wishes for it. So these are all ways of identifying with body. When we come onto the other skandas, we'll find there's ways of identifying with all the skandas. It's like this thing that we call self can sort of float around in a very interesting way. I mean, we could say, oh, I don't like my body. So, hold on, am I my body, or am I something in my mind that doesn't like my body? So what's going on there? So the whole sense of the entity of self can really float around in very interesting ways, and it's great fun to watch this if you get a nose for it. You can just kind of see, oh right, one second I was completely caught up in thoughts and in anxiety about the future, something that I've got to do, give a talk off the cuff, whatever it is. And then the next moment someone stands on my foot and I'm thinking, hey, you just stood on my foot. So there's this sudden change of identification from me, the thinker, to me, the body, for example. So anyway, this is a kind of a quick sense of trying to get a feeling for the way in which we may or may not identify with the body from time to time. So I said that actually body isn't quite it. It's not quite the translation of rupa. Well, I'll just say that there's nothing wrong with identifying with the body, just to say that. It's not like we've got to stop it. I'm not saying stop it, I'm saying get interested in it. Get interested in what you are identified with, who you feel and think yourself to be at any one moment. Yeah. So, rupa, R-U-P-A, literally means form. And in the sort of Buddhist context it's used, it can mean not just my form, not just the Buddha's form, it can mean any kind of form. It's kind of referring to the whole field of awareness that we usually think of as materiality. So what we think of as matter, the Buddha would call form. And actually he's got a bit of a head start on us there, because matter is just a really weird concept when you start looking at it. Form is an experience. Form is someone's called it the objective component of the perceptual situation. So there's something that I impress your friends at parties. The objective component of the perceptual situation. So in other words, whatever it is in your experience that feels like it's out there, that it's sort of solid, that it's kind of independent of your ideas about it. So it's not making any conjectures about what's causing, about what it is in itself. It's just saying, this is form. What the Buddha does is break form down. He sort of subdivides it into four little rooms, into the four elements. You might have come across the four elements, or the five elements, or the six elements. The four elements are earth, which is anything to do with anything that resists us, like this. Anything that we think of as solid, that's the earth element. Water, anything that flows, feels nice and watery. Fire, so that's the experience of heat, temperature. And wind, which is the experience of movement, of air, of almost energy, let's say. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's so not like our contemporary physics. It's a very, as it were, subjective way of looking at what we think of as objects. It's sort of looking at objects in terms of their immediate, our immediate experience of them. So let's just do a little bit of that. Again, just sitting where you are. So applying this to our own body, we're just going to apply this to our own body, our own form, our own rupa. So first off, just feeling the sense of contact with whatever's supporting you, chair or cushion or whatever. And feel the firmness of that contact. The unyieldingness of it. So this is the earthy aspect of rupa. Okay, now let's notice any moisture in our mouth, in our nose, in our eyes. So this is still rupa, and this is the water aspect of it. Of course, there's lots of lots of this inside our body that we can imagine, all the blood and all the other liquids in the body. And then noticing that the body has a temperature or has an experience of warmth or coolness. You might notice different parts of the body have a slightly different temperature feeling to them. Maybe the nose feels a bit cool on the in-breath, for example. Maybe the body has an overall feeling of being comfortable or uncomfortable because of temperature. So this is our fire element, the fiery aspect of our experience, of our rupa. And then notice the air coming in and out of the nostrils or the mouth. Expanding and contracting the lungs. But also any movement in the body. This also counts as air, as wind. The wind element. And even more subtly, you may be able to notice a sense of, as it were, energy in the body, sort of tingling. It could be tingling, it could be a sense of lack of energy in the body. It might be tiredness, or it could be stimulation. This is all an aspect of the wind element or the air element. So if we put all these four together, just sitting here, does that give you a slightly different experience of yourself as a whole, of your rupa as a whole? And can you feel how those elements are changing? Maybe quickly, maybe slowly. But maybe you can sense a quality of change or a flow within your experience of rupa, of your body, within these elements. And since we're here, can you notice any quality of pleasure or pain, even quite subtle qualities of pleasure and pain through the body? You might find a little twinge behind the shoulder blades and pleasant tingling in the hands. Just cast your awareness around and look for this dimension of pleasure and displeasure, discomfort. So this isn't a completely different experience. This quality of pleasure and pain isn't something else. It's just another, as it were, facet of rupa, or of your experience of your body. The rupa comes with this feeling quality of pleasure and pain. So you're welcome to carry on tuning in, but I'm going to talk a little bit more now, just to round off. So I'd like to just spend a few minutes moving into the area of Vedana, feeling tone. So that, as it were, other dimension of our experience, of our physical experience, has this quality of feeling, of Vedana to it. In fact, all of our senses, all of our physical senses, the 5 physical senses, and the mind sense, all comes with this quality of Vedana. Vedana, feeling tone. It's like, I often think of it a little bit like an impression. It's like our experience of the body, of all the senses, it's not just a kind of neutral projection onto a wall. We care about it, we feel it, it impresses itself on us, it's almost embosses itself on us. So I sometimes give the example that, so here's an object, and the object has an outline, it has a shape, and it simultaneously has a colour. And those aren't two different things. The colour comes with the shape comes with the colour. That's a little bit like the way that Vedana is always a part of our physical and mental experience. I sometimes think of it as like a relief map, where you have these 3-dimensional models. I saw this lovely 3-dimensional model of Snowdonia a while ago, and it's a little bit like that. That if you were to put a marble on top of one of the humps, it would roll downhill, wouldn't it? And if you want to get it up one of the humps, you have to sort of push it uphill. And that's a little bit like us and Vedana. We're always trying to roll down the Vedana hill. We're always trying to roll towards a more pleasant experience. If we're trying to do something that's difficult, we're sort of trying to roll uphill, and that's hard work. And then we sort of want a cup of tea and a chocolate biscuit or something. So this Vedana, this is the second of these heaps of the skandas, the second skanda, Vedana. And it's a really important one, because don't we just identify with Vedana? If we are in pain, I am in pain, that's a really strong thing. It really gets right down into the bones, doesn't it? If there is some sort of mental or emotional pain, suddenly our whole kind of experience of ourselves contracts around that if we're not careful. So it's really important to be able to recognise Vedana within our experience and recognise the degree to which we're identifying with Vedana. So if just the other day something happened to me that I really didn't like, and I felt this immediate kind of flush of anger going right up the back of my back and up my head, and it was like suddenly I was there. This is the most important thing. this unpleasant thing that's happening to me? And of course, the opposite thing can happen as well, where suddenly there's something really lovely happening that we want to hold on to, and this is what's important, and I'm not going to let go of this. I've got my holiday planned. I'm not going to cancel it for anyone, whatever it is. So Vedana is a really important skanda to be able to identify. You've probably come across it in terms of the gap, mind the gap between feeling and craving. It's very important for that reason. And it's very important to be able to recognise when we're identified with Vedana. I think that's all I want to say about Vedana. We'll spend some more time in the meditation exploring both body and Vedana, feeling.